This is TB Talks and BS Walks. Join the conversation or the BS. Here are the masterminds behind the microphone, Tyler and Brian.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the podcast. This is TB Talks and BS Walks. I'm Tyler, and as always with me is Brian. Today we have a special guest on our show. Aaron has been a friend of mine since about the 5th grade, and I brought him on the show today. He has the gift of gab and is a master debater. Don't confuse that with masturbator. It is a master debater.
Okay.
And just wanted to bring him on the show. And Brian, Aaron, what's up, boys?
Yo. Now, to be fair, I think you guys should talk a little bit about how you guys met, because we did that. So I think it's only fair.
Well, Aaron, correct me if I am wrong or if I leave out anything, but I moved to Buffalo, which is the little town that Aaron and I both went to school. I moved to Buffalo about the 4th grade and did 1 year in the elementary and then went to the middle school. So how it works here in Buffalo is there's 3 schools. We have a K through 4 is the elementary, and then we have the middle school, which is 5 through 8, and then the high school is 9 through 12. So 5th grade, my first year in the middle school, Aaron and I were actually in 2 different classrooms. And to make a long story short, I got into it with my 5th grade teacher and requested to be transferred to save further problems. And Aaron was in the class that I transferred to. And then we just kind of hit it off from there. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, that's pretty much sounds about right. And I remember a dude threatened to stone cold stunner you in the hallway, and I kind of stood up for you, and that was about that. So,
it's so nice when your whole WWE and WCW crush is still legitimate back then. Because I know you now, and it looks like.
So I'm gonna take a minute here, as you know, we like to have a little bit of comedy on this show. When I first met Aaron, the only thing he ever wore were sweatpants and wrestling t-shirts.
Absolutely.
Wow.
I was a stylish young man.
Child of the 90s. Whoa.
He was a real fashion maven.
Wait, were any of those zebra or leopard print?
No.
Oh, okay. So not that. Okay.
Strictly flat blue or black sweatpants and black shirts. So I was a styling young fellow.
Right. Did we go with the business up front, party in the back, or we?
Oh, no.
No. Okay.
The bowl cut predominantly, and which is equally as 90s, I would say.
Yes, I would agree.
Until I decided to shave it off, and it's been pretty short ever since. So.
Gotcha.
So you've had the same haircut now for like 20 years.
Well, I've done about the same,
I decided to get a bit hippie with it my senior year. It got pretty long, but that was a short phase.
I did. So. Yeah.
My phase ended, well, not when I was ready for it, but, that's male pattern baldness for you. Woo!
There you go. Happens to the best of children.
So, that is a brief history. And as I've said before, all the listeners know how Brian and I met Walmart back in about 2008. So
Wally, bringing people together.
Yeah, that's right. That's what we do. Now that we've all been formally introduced, let's get right into it. I want to touch base briefly on what we talked about last week, Brian, and you're talking about intolerance, and you gave the whole spiel about the Christian bakery, and just the whole hypersensitivity issue. Go back and let's recap a little bit on that, and I'm curious to hear Aaron's thoughts on that too. So let's go back a little bit and just to refresh our listeners about the intolerance aspect, and before we jump into the main topic for the show.
before I show how much of a bleeding heart liberal I am. You mean?
Well,
yeah, I don't blame you for not holding punches. I don't think anybody here does. But to go back, in Oregon, there was a bakery that was sued for being intolerant against a homosexual couple who came in and wanted them to bake a wedding cake for them. My stance was the bakery did not make them change what they were doing. They did not stop them from being who they were. They just refused to bake the cake on a moral religious grounds. However, in the lawsuit that they lost, it was because they were intolerant, and my stance was, tolerance is being able to work with somebody or being able to see somebody, do something with somebody without making them change who they are or what they are. And in this case, it was actually the other way around. The homosexual couple was actually being intolerant of the bakery. The bakery had to change everything or lose everything. That's where I see intolerance kind of backwards in a lot of cases. But that's just kind of a short, a summary of what I said.
Actually, as one of your hundreds of millions of avid listeners, I actually heard what you said. I listened to that episode.
Yep.
And yeah, you'll be surprised because I'm going to have some fairly left-leaning ideas, especially as we get into the whole protest thing. But I agree with you 100%. Actually, I firmly believe, because this was a couple years ago, if I remember correctly. And I remember thinking then how ridiculous it was that this couple just couldn't find a more supportive bakery. If I owned a business, I wouldn't want to be forced to serve someone I didn't necessarily agree with either. So I actually agree with you 100%. Now, the one caveat I would add to that is, as the law reads now, I agree with you. I think that, just like with race, of course, it would be a different situation if they refused to serve someone just because they were black.
Yeah.
The race is a protected class. Obviously, once you start getting into sexual orientation, then you start getting into folks' religious views and things like that. But I personally believe that sexual orientation should be added to those protective classes. I don't think you should be able to refuse service to someone just based on sexual orientation. But at the same time, if a member of the KKK walked in and wanted me to make a cake for them that was had a burning cross on it or something, I wouldn't want to do that either. So there's two sides to every story, and you have to lean in favor one way or the other in this situation. Very few situations I think are kind of that way where you have to pick a side, but in either situation you're going to be stepping on someone's toes, and I would tend to side with the company simply because they're being forced into a situation, whereas the customer has a choice to go somewhere else.
Right.
So,
which a lot of these, I think is, personal, like, I don't know how to put it. I had it in my head and then I lost it, but basically it's like, I think there's a lot of fine lines that we tend to cross accidentally in day-to-day life. And a business is held to a different standard, and I understand that. But all this arguing about intolerance is, I think, my biggest peeve, is sitting here listening to somebody saying somebody else is being intolerant because they disagree and being forced to change their views, as opposed to, hey, I'm this way, and the other person going, okay, and walking away. Like, sure. I'm a very live and let live type of person, and I have a hard time when somebody else is being forced to change everything about themselves simply because of a disagreement on beliefs.
Sure, and I completely understand that. Now, one thing that I also kind of came to mind while I was listening to your last episode was, I do believe that intolerance is not the same thing as intolerance. You know what I mean? Like, if someone is being intolerant and you're fighting against that, then I don't necessarily believe that you yourself are being intolerant. But at the same time, so for instance, again, you mentioned, and this isn't necessarily, a lot of people did, I'm not focusing this on you, that you don't support gay marriage, and that's 100% obviously up to you, and you're entitled to that opinion. You mentioned that you don't do anything to stop gay weddings, and you just kind of want to be left alone about the subject. I respect that 100%. On the other hand, if you are given the opportunity to vote in favor of allowing someone else to get married or refusing to allow them to get married, then you are doing something to get in the way of that. And that's what I have a problem with. By voting in favor to allow someone, and again, in this example, gay marriage, to give them that option is not necessarily supporting it. It's giving them the option and not putting restrictions on their life. So that's what I have a problem with.
Yeah, but the same vote comes up for churches, unfortunately.
Yes.
Like we have that, a lot of churches are now forced to do, homosexual weddings in the church of all places. We know their stance, so it kind of throws me off on that. Like I tend to stay out of those votes. I've been around several different states being a military brat, and I've seen a lot of the states, there are states now who voted for gay marriage and everything. I tend to stay out of that because I don't have a say. I really don't.
Well, and that's great. See, so, not to interrupt you, but I support that 100%. If you just choose to, like you said, I just want to be left alone about it, I don't have an opinion, and you don't vote against it, then great. But it is the people that claim to, like, I don't have anything against gay marriage, or I don't support it, so I'm going to vote against it. To me, those are two different things. To me, voting against something, you're avidly opposing it as opposed to just not supporting it.
Yeah.
So
with my religious background, it's a tough thing. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. Like it took a long time for me to decide where my stance actually was, because I come from a religious background where there are things you just don't do, and there's things that you do.
Yeah.
And then a lot of that I feel we kind of throw on other people instead of just
I understand where you're coming from 100%. I was actually the youth deacon at a church that I then left because they wouldn't support gay marriage, surprisingly enough. I've done a lot of changing over the years, so my stance has changed on the subject dramatically, of course. So, but coming from that place, I can certainly understand why people have the views that they have. And I think they should be entitled to those views 100%. So,
what my 2 cents on it is that obviously, like Brian, I was raised, my mom was a missionary Baptist, and so, but something I've come to find out is that a lot of those churches, at least any around here, they have more hypocrisy in them than anything else. And it's I know it's like the church that I grew up going to was some of the biggest hypocrites I've ever met in my life. And that's where I'm a little bit different than my parents. Do I support gay marriage? No, I don't. I'll be the first to openly admit that I don't. But the thing is, though, how I was raised was that, okay, so if those two people are getting married, then they're automatically going to hell because of that decision that they want to make. And I don't know if I'm not that right wing about it. I don't think that we have a right to judge anybody. I may not support it, but I wouldn't condemn somebody for doing it. I'm not going to belittle them. Now, on a different topic, I used to be somebody that would throw around black jokes. I threw around a lot of them, a lot. And then I had a guy say something to me about, well, it's been a little while ago now, that really kind of, honestly, it put me in my place in that aspect. And I wouldn't really ever call myself racist. However, I probably made some jokes that, made myself seem that way, which in turn, has people have certain opinions about me based on those things. But I had a guy say something to me one time, and he said he was former military, and he said I had said the N-word in a conversation, and he said, you know what? He's like, I don't approve of you saying that word. He said, and I'll tell you why. He said, there are those people that you're calling the N-word. He says, there are thousands of those that died in our armed forces protecting your right to call them that. And I was just like, you know what? Like, that really kind of hit home for me. And,
Sure.
So at that point, I really, really tried to, not use terms like that, even in a joking, even if I'm totally kidding. I'll never forget that. That really hit home for me, which is the big topic I wanted to cover on the show today. It was relates to that. I think it relates to intolerance. It relates to all sorts of things, and that is the current protests going on in the NFL. I'm sure that any of you listeners out there that watch football, even if you don't even have to watch football, and I'm sure you've heard about it, the NFL players that are taking a knee during the national anthem. I'll be the first to tell you that I'm a person that has extreme support for the country. I've always been extremely patriotic. So when I first saw that happening, I was instantly pissed off. And I thought, how dare these guys? They're disrespecting the flag and disrespecting everything that it stands for. But it was actually Aaron that in a conversation he had that was generated over like 200 comments on Facebook over a debate on this subject. And I'm one of those people that I'm not so close-minded that I can't entertain the idea of looking at somebody else's point of view. Mm-hmm. And he said some things that made me think about it, and I thought, you know what? Like, I didn't think about it that way, and I'll let Aaron cover more on it. But it all boiled down to, they weren't necessarily protesting the country. They weren't protesting the flag or what it represents. They were protesting. They had a legitimate grief, and that is that maybe as African Americans that they have some injustices and they're not being treated as fairly. And I said I'll let Aaron cover more into that, and the way that he said it, and when he started saying these things, it made me realize, you know what, like, okay, maybe we should stop for just a second instead of automatically getting pissed off about, okay, well, how dare these guys, or sons of bitches as President Trump called them, how dare that they don't stand for the national anthem and they're disrespecting the flag. Well, if we take a step back, maybe we should look at, do they have a legitimate reason to do that? And as we all know, it is your God-given right to silent protest. And I think silent protesting is obviously much more, it's a better way to approach it than a violent protest for sure. But like I said, I just kind of want to hear your guys' thoughts on it, because that's, that's where I'm at now, where I was, extremely pissed off because they were doing it. But I thought, well, do they have a legitimate right to protest? Maybe we should find out what they're protesting about before you instantly start making assumptions, if that makes sense.
Well, you've kind of just already revealed what my stance is on it, so I'll let Brian go first.
Dope. All right. Well, like I mentioned earlier, I am a military brat. I have certain stances. There's just certain lines you don't cross for me. The burning of the flag that U.S. Postal Service stopped, that was a big thing to me. I understand the freedom of speech, but I'm on that line. There's speech and there's action. Like, I understand people needing to voice their opinions. I understand protests. I get where they're coming from. It's a lot of times it just angers me how they do it. Like, I understand, peaceful protests. I get that. When you're out there and you're standing for what you believe in, I'm all for that. My issue was when one side would go to the other and try to show off how stupid they were, Like that comes from the right, it comes from the left. They always tend to go over to the opposite side and start talking down to people, and that drives me nuts. Like, that's not the point of what you're trying to do. What you're there for is to support your side of the stance. So when this started with the kneeling and with the flag and Kaepernick and everything, I my dad went overseas several times for this country. There's been people in our family we've lost overseas. There's people we know who went overseas and never came back. And when you have that kind of connection in the military, there's just certain things you don't do. I understand that, there's been a lot of bad things between cops and, African American people. I know that's been going on for years, and I know it's blown up a lot because of the media, but I just don't see the purpose of doing this. Like, there's so many other ways out there to voice your opinion, to say things, to do things. Not playing. When people would ask why Kaepernick is not playing in a game, he could have said the same thing, but instead it was the flag. And I don't know. To me, that anger, I'm kind of with Tyler on there. I was immediately angry, but I'm trying to be understanding of where they're coming from. But that is a sore spot for me. Anything to do with the flag, or what this nation has come from and changed, and the flag represents everything we were and everything we came to be. And to kneel at is just basically to step back and say that wasn't worth our time. And that.
Well, and Aaron has a brother. Aaron has a brother in the military. So,
he's gone overseas twice. I have several friends in the military. My parents didn't serve, but my grandparents did.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't a military brat by any means, but I do have that kind of facet to consider as well. So I 100% I get where you're coming from, and even agree with you to some extent. I do believe that we should show respect, and that I think the flag stands for a lot more than necessarily what they're considering.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it works both ways. I think that if they need to consider what the flag represents to others, then and show respect to that, then I think others need to try to be, and it sounds like you are. Again, obviously this is not focused at you. Others need to try to be understanding about what that flag could represent to them, which in this case seems to be a government that is mistreating them in their eyes. Then they should kind of try to understand where they're coming from. I heard one person state something just yesterday that I think sums up kind of your outlook on it, Brian, and that's if the flag represents so much, and if they respect anything that the flag represents, then they shouldn't be kneeling. They shouldn't just be focused on the one or the handful of things that they don't respect. They should be focusing on the things that do.
Yeah.
And I think that's more or less your point.
Yeah.
So Aaron, let me ask you this: do you believe that there is racism? That there's a racism problem?
I believe
in
that anyone who doesn't believe there's a racism problem in America is either racist themselves or stupid.
Right.
It's really not.
I don't know if you saw it. Yeah, I don't know if you saw it, but I just saw it online. I think it was yesterday. There was actually a bar owner in St. Louis that, in the midst of all this stuff, has actually taken 2 NFL jerseys, both African Americans, and has taped them together and is now using them as a doormat outside of his establishment.
Oh.
And now what happened is it was Marshawn Lynch and Colin Kaepernick jerseys. And the way that he set it up was he put Marshawn Lynch's jersey in front of Kaepernick's to where it actually read Lynch Kaepernick. And it was drawing some attention, and they said, well, we don't like your jerseys in that order because that's a racism thing. And so he actually went out and moved him. So now it says Kaepernick Lynch. But my thought was, how is that not racism anyways? I mean, if you're putting 2 NFL players that you know are African American on your doorstep as a doormat for your customers when they come in, I mean, that's a pretty good slap in the face, don't you think?
Well, yes and no. I mean, and what I mean by no is that yes, it definitely smacks of racism. Would he do the same thing if those players were white? Then, if yes, then maybe the sentiment itself isn't racist. But with the tension, the way things are right now, I think it's in poor taste at the very least.
Sure.
That being said, I think that there are far worse examples of racism, and even outside of the police brutality argument, that you can bring up, rather than, one dude in one bar in one town in America. I mean, it's more of the widespread, kind of the institutional racism, the systemic racism that they're referring to, that is the problem. So I and that's what I think that they're protesting, and I can certainly understand that sentiment.
Yeah.
Well, let's touch on police brutality. I know that it's out there. I know that it happens. I mean, you can get on YouTube and spend a day watching cops do things the wrong way and watching them break the law themselves. So I know that it's out there, and I know that, a lot of people preach there's a census out here that, blacks are more likely to commit crimes than white people. But me personally, I've arrested far more white people than I ever have black. And, as we know, I was a law enforcement officer. But so I guess, I know that there's reports out there of crimes that have happened where the race of the victim or the suspect weren't disclosed. And so, I don't know how accurate that I believe those FBI censuses are, or but I do know that police brutality is out there, and I'd be a fool to tell you that bad cops don't exist, because they do, and there is very much racism in police work. I mean, I've been there, I lived it, I know, and like I said, I saw it firsthand. So I definitely think that now, I didn't vote for Trump or Hillary. I didn't vote, period, actually. So I don't have a lot of room to, sway to one side of the fence or the other, because my voter registration card actually got messed up. I was registered to vote in a different county, and I moved. And long story short, I ended up not being able to vote. So I wasn't able to vote for any of them. So I guess that's where I can put my opinion out there for someone who's, as far as voting purposes goes, who's totally neutral. I didn't vote for any of them, but I was in support of Trump. But the more that I see things, especially this whole protest thing, I mean, I'm starting to believe that the guy's out of his mind. And I mean, there are things, I think I posted it on your Facebook wall, Aaron, about how Obama addressed the how everybody is entitled to their own opinions issue versus the way that Trump said,
Yeah,
and I think
the video where. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think Obama, talked for 3 to 4 minutes, explaining, because someone had asked him what his stance on it was, and he said, the greatest thing about living in America is, obviously, that I think we can realize that everybody's entitled to their opinion, and we all have a difference in opinion. And then, Trump lasted about 30 seconds, and he just said, we should fire him.
Fire the sons of bitches. Yeah. Well, and that's kind of where I'm at on it. Is yes, Obama's point is essentially my point, in that you can't just respect the freedom to protest and the freedom of speech when it's easy. You also have to respect it when it's hard and when you don't agree. And so that's, to me, that's what it boils down to. You can be pissed off all you want, and you can be furious at the fact that they're kneeling at the flag, as long as you respect the fact that they have the right to do it. If you want to then also counter protest, and like many people are claiming to do, whether it actually happens or not, we'll see, and boycott the NFL, that's your right. And so it's, I think that is going to speak louder than anything else.
Okay, let me just make it clear, though. If you're going to protest the NFL, do not buy tickets so you can sit there and boo. That kind of defeats the purpose.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. It's like these people that, again, buy CDs and books just to destroy them. It's like, well, they already got your money. I don't, like...
They're fine with it. But, they're okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I do think, which of course, I mean, you said, Tyler, you mentioned that you were neutral because you didn't get to vote, but clearly, of course, you had an opinion.
Sure.
And I do think that there is a real night and day difference, especially in considering one of the things that I think I may have shared it on Facebook, but one of the things I saw was a tweet from Trump from several years ago talking about the how Obama shouldn't be chiming in on the Washington Redskins thing. He shouldn't be worried about what the NFL is saying or doing. He has more important things to be doing. And so it's kind of ironic, his attitude on it. I think Trump's, not to get, I mean, I don't know how far down that rabbit hole you want to go, but I think Trump's core problem a lot of the time is that he considers any criticism about the government in any way as a personal attack because his ego is just so huge.
He's nowhere near self-aware.
Yeah. So because of that, if anyone has an opinion on the government whatsoever that isn't positive, he feels the need to respond, and it's not doing him any favors.
No, not at all. And as far as that goes, I mean, I don't think, and people ask me around the election time, you're certainly not going to vote for Hillary, which obviously I didn't vote for either one of them, but I don't think that either one of them were a great candidate.
Oh no. I think, for the horrible
for the position. I think voting a third party would have been a much better option at this point.
That's kind of what I did.
And like I
did their research, you'd know the third party candidates weren't that great either.
No, but they were.
Jill Stein, who was an anti-vaxxer, which again, I don't know what you guys believe, but I think is just nutso. And then you had what was his name? Now it's escaping me. The Green Party. Maybe Libertarian. Gary Johnson. Who, at every time he was on camera, he may have been a very qualified candidate. I hear good things about him sometimes, but every time he's on camera, he just made himself look like an idiot. So.
I'm not sure. That may have been the guy. I can't remember who I voted for. But I was of the mind, and I tell people all the time, the reason I voted the way I did is because I'd rather have an evil I have no idea exists than one that's staring me right in the face. So,
sure. And he was the Libertarian candidate. The Green Party candidate was Jill Stein. But yeah, I mean, none of our choices were great by any means. Of course, I feel that Hillary's evil, so to speak, and I don't say so to speak as in like I don't agree with it. I think she was a terrible candidate. I think hers was based largely on a lot of speculation and conspiracy theory, whereas Trump's was kind of on camera, so I didn't really understand the equivalency between the two. But that's my opinion. I can certainly understand why people didn't support her and would never vote for her. And that's I think where we kind of get down to people are just going to have different opinions sometimes. There's not always a right and a wrong answer. If there was, then these debates wouldn't be nearly so heated.
Right.
So if it was clear cut, it wouldn't be.
And I believe what Aaron's referring to, I'm sure everyone's seen it by now, but Trump's being on camera was, I believe it was like a city transit bus or something like that, where he was caught like degrading women.
Yep.
Wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's one part. That's one example. But I mean, there's a lot more than just that. If that was the only thing that he had against him, it would be pretty close to damning in and of itself. You would think. I mean, can you imagine that coming out, 12 years ago, something like, I can't imagine a candidate ever making it past that point. And I was very vocal in that, like, oh, he's done now. Like, there's no chance. And I had to eat crow on that one. I never thought in a million years he would come back after that. But it's, it's not just that. There's a lot of footage, or even his voice, recordings, just things that he's said that are blatantly 100% contradictory to things he's saying now. And so it's, whereas with Hillary, at least he was shady about it.
No, there were some recordings that contradicted what she said later on, but that's with any candidate. You can't really have that. Every candidate changes their opinion when they're in the running. Bush did it, Clinton did it, the Clinton did it again, Bush did it again. Like, I could go down the list all the way back. They all had one stance before and then completely changed. I don't
think I've ever known a 100% honest politician.
No,
I don't think those exist.
Of course, that was a big vote too. He's not a politician. So no, when he started running, he became one. That was my stance. So
well, and here's the big thing about it. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't care what he wants to call himself. You don't get to that level of success in business without being somewhat of a politician yourself. So and then so if you, no matter, and that's what always frustrated me when people said that. It's like, well, even if he wasn't one before, of course he is now. He knows how to play the game. So
as he stated.
Well, and I mean, the thing that bothers me about it is that Trump has always been about the spotlight. Trump he had a run with WWE for a while. He's been, he had a reality TV show. I mean, somebody like that, I don't think is any candidate to run the country.
No.
And I think there again, that's his ego. It's just something else to boost his ego.
There's been things that he has done that I have agreed with.
Red power tie.
Yeah. There's been some of the things he's done that I agree with, and there's been a lot of stuff that I just, he's just spitfiring. I have no idea where he's going with what he's doing half the time.
Yeah.
Like I thought it was good with the people he surrounded himself with. That's one thing I'll give him is when he got in, he got the people who were experts in their area to work for.
Dude, I'm not so sure Trump knows where he's going after. I think Trump is like a kid, like on a spaceship. He's like, oh my God, let's do this now, let's go.
Yeah.
like the dude from the Lego movie, spaceship.
Right.
Like, seriously, the whole, we're going to build a wall and we're going to make Mexico pay for it. Like, how exactly do you intend to enforce that? Like, I don't quite follow you there. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I understand what you're trying to do and what you're saying, but I don't understand how you think that's even, like, plausible. I think Mexico may have an issue with that.
Yeah. Back to your North Korea. I know you touched on the North Korea missile, Brian, I think a couple of shows ago. And there was a deal where Trump, I saw Trump had an interview with, I think it was on CNN or something, and they were talking about, he said, if North Korea attacks, he's like, what are you going to do? And Trump was like, well, he's pretty much said they were going to force China to attack them. Like he was going to force, and so the guy literally said, how do you plan on doing that? How are you going to force China? And he goes, because he's like, that's where all of our product goes. I mean, like that's where the biggest import in the world is with China. So we'll just pull everything out from it, and then we'll force it to do it. And I'm like, I don't know if you guys.
You understand what an import is? Like that's what we get. That's what all our stuff comes from. Like seriously.
From China.
Okay, okay. What's going on right now is Moon, not necessarily Moon, but his advisors, the people who came over with him when he visited Trump, have asked Trump if South Korea could nuclear weaponize. And Trump agreed. He said if Moon decided so, that they would help him get set up and everything, and so that they could protect themselves. Right now, if a nuke were to launch from North Korea, it'd be 20 minutes. That's all the time they have to evacuate. 20 minutes. And even if they evacuate, they're stuck there. There's no way we can get in and help. There's no, like, we could hazmat suit up all the way, all we want. There's no way we can get to those people. That's millions of people just gone. Like, even if they escape.
It doesn't even require the nuke. I mean, that's what's so tenuous about the situation, or, about the situation is, if we try to do anything to North Korea, they've got guns trained on the capital, on Seoul. And so it doesn't even really need to be a nuke. They've just kind of got us by the balls as far as anything militaristically. If anything goes down, South Korea's taken a blow.
Yes, but a lot less if the nuke doesn't drop.
Oh, of course, obviously, yeah. But I'm just saying that it's a factor that we have to consider no matter what. And
which is why Moon hasn't really done anything.
Exactly.
Moon's trying to protect his people, but I just don't know how long that's going to last.
Yeah.
Ill's insane. Un is insane.
Again, it may surprise you how more to the right. I honestly consider myself more moderate instead of liberal, regardless of what I said before. I actually kind of lean more right in that situation where I don't know how we let it get this far.
Yeah.
You can't give a child a grenade and expect things not to go tits up. I'm sorry. I mean, it's I probably could have.
What's this little middle pin thing do?
So I don't know. It's definitely a sticky situation now that there's really no clean way out of.
No, I mean, I think the steps we've taken so far have been pretty good. Like, the sanctions are good because now they're on their own. And China's kind of fallen in line with that. So it's good that we have at least that kind of unity. I don't see this being like a world war. I see North Korea doing something possibly to South Korea, and North Korea and South Korea just no longer exist. It's a horrible downside. I don't look forward to that. I hope it never happens. But Kim Jong-un is just crazy. Like, sometimes I believe he believes the crap he's been shoveling. Yeah.
He's a dotard.
I believe you mean daughter, sir.
Daughter.
But no, I don't know. Like I say, I am. It's funny to me that you said that you approve of the sanctions, because I do too. But Trump himself has actually been very critical of the sanctions. He thinks more should be done, that we shouldn't just stop with sanctions, and when the rest of the world is kind of having to rein him in, which, like I said, whether you agree or not, it's kind of goes back to what you guys kind of mentioned before. Tyler, you mentioned it in a previous episode, and Brian, you kind of said something earlier about how you approve of some of the things Trump has done. I am curious, like, not to put you guys on the spot, but what has he done that you guys approve of? Because his approval is so low, and of course he just seems to be losing supporters. He's just kind of bleeding them out. Yeah. What do you think he's done right since he's been in office?
Well, for me, it's the following through with the sanctions was a good step. The people he surrounded himself with, like I said, if he didn't know how to do a certain situation, or how to handle a certain facet of his office, he found somebody who did. Like, getting the general he did for the military was a big step for me, because I know he went to, people who worked under him and asked him, is this a person I could trust? Is this somebody who you would trust? And just went by, the glowing recommendations of the soldiers that were underneath him. To have that kind
didn't really work out that way with Comey, but it
no, I know,
his defense secretary.
But
no, I think both sides actually agree that was a good pick. So I agree.
So there, I mean, for me, it's few and far between some of the things he's done, and then the rest of it. To be honest, I'm not a very political person. This podcast has gotten me more involved in politics than I ever have been before, because I really don't care. I'm a live and let live type of person. That's why I don't get involved, is because I don't want to, throw all this stuff at people and tell them they're wrong and all this other stuff when I just want to be left alone. But with this podcast, it presented a challenge, and like I said, I try to be open-minded about it. When we first started, I said, if people have any kind of facts or anything that they can send me that I can look up, I'm willing to change my opinions. It's just, you know, I'm less involved than most people. So
well, and to be very clear, I didn't ask this question or pose this question to necessarily even debate the things you guys would bring up. I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah.
Because everyone is so heated about politics nowadays, and they feel so strongly that a lot of people just posing that simple question is a challenge. They take it as a challenge, and they take it as being disrespected, when all you're doing is asking why they feel the way they feel. So I took and same thing. So I'm taking this opportunity. I know you guys have more of a level head, and I am very curious. I mean, Tyler, what do you think?
Man, I think it was for me. You know, stock markets are at a record high, or at least they hit a record high. Yep. You know, oil prices have remained low for the most part. I know that's recently. You know, consumer confidence is buoyant and inflation is under control. I mean, you know, I think those are the big things for me. You know, like I said, and there again, he said he was going to do a lot more. I was on board, not so much as for those, and this might cause a stir here, but I was on board for his illegal immigration control. Now, however, not for the fact that if you've already been here, I know that there were some that were worried they were going to be deported back to where they came from. I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, if they've already here, if they've already established residency here, but I think as far as, you know, we do have an illegal immigration problem here, and I think that you know, his stance on getting that under control was right in my book, at least trying to, you know, I don't necessarily know about building the wall, but I mean, I'm sure there's just his whole stance on the immigration problem.
That is a tough line for me.
Now, it very well could be. Like I said, there were, you know, some things that I didn't agree with, like you know, where I said, you know, I don't think those should have to be in fear of deportation. I mean, if they've already established residency here and they're not causing a problem and things like that, you know, like, leave them alone. But I do know there has been a significant less amount of people trying to import over here since you know, since he's got in, just for fear of what might happen to him.
Yeah, sure.
But the you know, the biggest things for me was, you know, just the economy, as far as, you know, stock markets and oil price and things like that. I mean, those were, because I know, you know, the country was in debt, like $4 trillion or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's came up a little bit since he's been in.
That's not going to be an easy fix, and I don't know if it's going to be fixed while he's in there. To be honest with you,
but I mean,
it's gosh.
Those were my. I mean, you know, that's just my answer to the question. Those are the things that I think that he's done right. You know,
and it's funny. I mean, because of course that's been the big thing. The immigration has been obviously the main focus of his tenure, and it is funny to me that so many people kind of cite that as something that he's done well. And again, I don't want to debate it. I don't, you know, because I certainly understand this. You know, the idea, the fact that he wants to rein in the problem is what you support. But it's the work that was done prior to him getting in office. I mean, that's something that we've been working on for quite some time. You know, to the point that
since before,
you know,
Clinton.
a lot of people. I say to the point where Obama was actually, one of his nicknames was the deporter in chief. He deported more illegal immigrants than I think either Clinton or Bush, but certainly more than Trump has so far in comparison. You know, obviously it's just his first 6 months or whatever. You know, and then the wall, I think, is it's a pretty silly idea. I don't know that. Anyone at this point. It's funny because
they magically can't climb over.
Yeah, and they can't take airplanes, or it's just funny to me that that wall would serve more to keep immigrants in than it would out, because why would they, for the immigrants that do want to go back and forth, if it's harder for them to get back in, they're not gonna leave,
Yeah.
but as far as the sentiment itself, I can certainly understand wanting to get rid of immigrants that cause problems. I would be more in favor of something along the lines of that, of, issue these people, like you said, that have residency here, not necessarily make them, encourage them, give them incentive to become citizens. And if they do start causing trouble, there's always the imminent threat that they could be sent back home.
To be fair, there's a lot going into becoming a citizen. It is ridiculous. Like, the price itself is ridiculous. That is one thing. Like, I had a long talk of, like I said, I've gotten more political in starting this podcast than I have ever, and my wife's really big into politics, and we had a huge talk about immigration just on the drive to Missouri this past vacation. And there's a lot that goes into it that I was unaware of. Like, I didn't realize the price was so ridiculously high, like tens of thousands of dollars or more. I mean, I make that maybe in a year, and that's not even the amount I can spend. Like, and these people are dropping it to become citizens, so it's kind of rough. Like, I think that should come down. I think that, unfortunately, I am of the stance that if you're here illegally, you should go back, but we should offer a chance to become a citizen at a different level. Yeah. Because I mean, seriously. This is a ridiculous price, and then there was a lot of misinformation. I really want to cover this real quick. I'm sorry, but there was a lot of misinformation about this deportation and stuff, about military having to be deported, and about workers being deported. No, if you're a worker, you have a work visa. You're not going to get deported. If you have served in the military, I think it's 3 years, a minimum of 3 years. You're already a citizen. Nobody in the military is being deported. Like, if you're active military, you're not being deported. If you're overseas and get shot in your first 6 months and come back, you're not deported. You took a bullet for our country. You are a citizen. Like, these are standard rules. So there was a lot of misinformation coming about that. And then in this last hurricane, Harvey, they were talking about a medic who was he was from Mexico. And they were trying to use him as an argument. Well, if he were deported, he wouldn't have been there to help the people. And I'm sorry, but if he's working as a medic, he has a work visa, or he is a citizen. Like, you can't get a work in a medical field that I'm aware of without at least a work visa. So a lot of the arguments.
That's something I was just saying, I'm not informed enough on that to really have an opinion one or the other as far as the work visas themselves. Mm-hmm. I was under the impression that even that something about work visas or something of that nature was even getting more difficult to obtain or renew.
And that doesn't surprise me.
As you say, so, but I don't know enough about it to really debate it, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
It's
definitely one more thing before
complicated topic.
Yeah. One more thing before we move on. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I know we could go on for days. But you were back to what Aaron said about Trump's approval rating. Mm-hmm. I think he's at 39% after 6 months.
Yeah, it's something ridiculous. It's literally the lowest ever.
Well, they said President Obama and George Bush were both at 56 at the same juncture. But I mean, you'd have to go back to like Gerald Ford, like in the 70s, to find one as low as that. And even then, doing the research real quick, I believe Gerald Ford was, Gerald Ford was also at 39% after 6 months in office. But Trump's disapproval rating is higher than Ford's at the half-year mark. So I mean, I guess so far he's on par to be the worst. As far, of course, he won the election with anemic numbers. So I mean, it's unsurprising that they're still poor.
Yep.
Sure.
Moving on, though, I did want to cover Brian. This was what I was going to tell you last week before we had some audio problems.
Yes.
Are you a Toys R Us kid?
I don't want to grow up.
Well, you heard that Toys R Us filed bankruptcy, right?
I actually had not until you had mentioned it.
Toys R Us officially filed bankruptcy at $5 billion in debt.
Wow.
But I believe they're still keeping their stores, aren't they?
They are. They're keeping. Yeah, they pay approximately $400 million in interest every year.
Sheesh.
What they pay.
Good Lord.
And I got some numbers here to throw at you. Toys R Us owes $14.6 million to Jax, which Jax is who makes all the wrestling figures.
Mm-hmm.
Which last year they posted a profit of $1.2 million, making the Santa Monica toy supplier one of more than 100,000 creditors sideswiped by the toy chain's bankruptcy. So they're trying to compete with Amazon and losing terribly.
Mm-hmm.
As is everyone.
Right, but they say they owe $7.5 billion to a group that includes virtually every major toy maker in the country. So Mattel, Hasbro, Spin Master, Lego, Radio Flyer, and Crayola.
So that's why my Gundams aren't there anymore. Oh man,
There you go. There you go.
that's devastating.
But yeah, they are keeping the stores open, I guess. But they filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Toys R Us. So you might have to grow
I
up
don't
now.
understand. I honestly, I mean, as much as I love Toys R Us and the fond memories I have,
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand how a company can claim bankruptcy when they owe so many people so much money and then stay open. You know, like it baffles. It really baffles me. Just be like, you know what? No, we're not gonna pay, but we're gonna be open tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, no, it's like a big reset button to them. It really doesn't hurt them. It's the people they owe that's going to end up, either they have to cut off business with Toys R Us just out of principle, or they're starting fresh with Toys R Us and hope that Toys R Us pays them.
Yeah, it doesn't screw them again. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the big. I loved Toys R Us. That was where I went to get the rare toys, like the Gundams. That was my favorite toy when I was growing up. Gundams, Transformers, everything. That Toys R Us was the place to go to get that stuff in high quality. And now,
their prices,
gosh,
their prices are insane, man.
I know.
I went in there. Was looking at Nerf guns. My company that I work for, we have a couple of contracts with some Toys R Us, so we have to go in and service their crane machines and stuff. And I was in there looking around and was looking at some Nerf guns. Dude, it's easy. You can drop $75 to $100 on a Nerf gun.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's unreal.
You should see their Lego section.
I don't doubt it. And there's actually Linda Murphy, who is a CEO of Product Launchers, which they make your small mom and pop things like your fidget spinners, do-it-yourself slime kits, all that other stuff. They said they rely heavily on Toys R Us for visibility and sales. But she said she has little hope that the 5 toy makers will receive even a fraction of what they're owed.
Oh no. No, not now.
Yeah, as you say, if Mattel ain't getting their money, then little Ma and Pa sure ain't.
No.
But but it's also one of more than 300 retailers to file for bankruptcy this year. Because of, Amazon is just cleaning house, and other forms of. Aaron, you used to pre-order like consoles and video games and stuff like from the store, but now I think you do it all on Amazon, don't you? And just have it delivered right to your door.
Yeah, I do. I can pre-order something on Amazon and have it delivered to me on release day. Why the hell would I get out and do it myself? It's
just to get that few hours extra in. Nah.
Yeah. Nowadays, I'm working. I can't go to a midnight release. So if I'm not going to be able to play until 5 o'clock at night anyway, I might as well have it waiting on my doorstep when I get home.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's actually saving me time. So.
Well, I think can't you get a little bit cheaper on Amazon? I know they run some specials on certain,
now if you've got Amazon Prime, Prime and you pre-order a game, you even get a discount, I think.
Yeah, you get a discount. You don't get charged shipping. And it goes. I do all digital downloads because I have a 5-year-old who likes to play with pretty shiny things, and so I haven't ordered a game in a while, but I still order a lot of stuff through Amazon, and no shipping price, getting a discount, like getting something for $5 that's normally $20. I'm all for. I'm behind that 100%.
Yeah. I'll tell you now, man, I shop more.
They got the convenience and they have, the price. I mean, they are not only can they compete price wise with everyone else or beat them, but then they're preying on everyone's laziness, which that's, I mean, come on.
Pretty soon we're all gonna look like those people on that ship from frickin' Wall-E.
Yeah.
I know anymore. I do all of my shopping on Xbox Store. I mean, I don't buy anything on disc anymore. I mean, I buy it all digital.
Yep.
I mean, I can pre-order a game, and now if you buy it on the Xbox Store, you can pre-order, and they don't charge you till 10 days before release, but you can go ahead and install it to your console, and where it's ready to go, and then they charge you 10 days per release, and then 11. And a lot of times they've been releasing games available to play at 11. So you get an extra hour to play. The only thing you can't do online is consoles. I mean, I'd still have to do that through GameStop or Amazon, but I mean, I buy everything on the store and buy it digitally. My only complaint is that you can't trade in games, I guess, if you ever wanted to trade them in. But although we already
I'm still kicking it old school. Get this, if I get the disc cheaper through Amazon, and then if I beat them early or if I don't like them, I take them to GameStop and I get my $20. So.
Well, you still get robbed on you still get robbed on the new game. You paid $64, and then they're going to come and sell it for $55 after you bought it after they bought it from you for $15.
I was about to say, if you're going in and you're getting $20 for your game, you're going in the week after it released, because further.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I bought Destiny 2, which I am just neck deep in, and the reason I bought it, made sure to get a physical copy, was because I knew there was a real good chance that it was going to screw me just like Destiny 1 did, and I was ready to go back and get my $20 out of it.
So has it?
No, like I said, I am neck deep in it, man. I don't know if you guys play it or not, but I'm very happy with my purchase. I'm pleasantly surprised.
I'm working on it. A friend of mine's supposed to be getting it. We have an Xbox share, and then I'm supposed to get it on PlayStation and play with my dad.
Yeah, so I've got it on PlayStation, so you have to look me up, get your PlayStation name it.
Dude, PS4 needs to, they need to copy Microsoft on that deal. Dude, that game share, though, is the way to go. I mean, if you've got, multiple, I mean, if you've got, one buddy that you play with consistently, and you can make a deal where you say, okay, I'll buy one game, you buy the next, but then you buy one copy and you both can play. I mean, that's the way to go, man.
Yeah.
Is it not existent on PS?
It does not. No.
Oh,
nope.
I thought it was.
Now, what you can do is you can
watch somebody play for a little bit.
You can watch somebody play.
Yeah.
And there is some sort of a share play feature, but I think it's more of if the game has couch co-op, then you can through the streaming that they have on there, through the share, you can play that way.
Oof, that sounds horrid.
Yeah, but how many? You have to count on the streaming, which is very low quality unless you just have gigabit internet.
Again, horrid.
Yeah, I say, and how many games host couch co-op nowadays? I mean,
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Brian, why don't you take us into, since we're on the video games, why don't you take us into your Brian's Moment section?
Brian's Moment. Okay, yeah.
As you guys know, Brian's Moment is where Brian covers the latest and greatest. Yeah. He covers the latest and greatest video games, what he's playing, what he wants to play. And then we're going to cover a couple of things that I want to get into as far as things that I've played. But anyways, man, why don't you go ahead and kick it off?
All right, to Brian's Moment. BM, no medication. It's awesome. All right. So what we're looking at is Shadow of War. Shadow of War is coming out here in about 11 days, roughly 12 days. And it's the sequel to Shadow of Mordor. I've been watching a lot of the development videos. There's a lot coming out for the game. There's a lot of anger coming out with the game. But overall, it looks like such a good play, like such a good game. The graphics are great. I'm hoping they have an Xbox One X version that's going to be 4K, because that's just going to look amazing.
Yes.
Basically, you're coming back as Talion, and you are with Celebrimbor. You make another ring, and it cuts off. Like, the trailer kind of shows Celebrimbor being taken away and you surviving because you have the ring that he made. From then on, you have... It's basically open world. I hate when they say open world, but they do something like this, because Mass Effect was the same way. Oh, we're in open world. No, you're not. Okay, there's a map area that you can explore that is... they say it's open world. It's a map. And then when you need to go to another map, you have to fast travel or load in the next map. However, the maps are huge. They're a whole lot bigger than the Shadow of Mordor. So there's a lot to do in each map, and there's several maps, which surprised the crap out of me. Like, there's so much to this game, so much content, so much area to cover. There's so much to unlock. Like, now you unlock different swords, different bows, different knives, different armor pieces, armor sets that give you certain buffs and debuffs, and several different aspects of this game that are just so amazing. And I've been following through the development, watching the gameplay trailers, and they release a new one like every week, and they're about an hour long, but they do something different in each one. They have different capabilities. Like, you have the Caragors, but the Caragors do like the Karagaths from the what was it called, Lord of the Hunt, from the DLC from Shadow of Mordor. The Karagaths were a stealth Caragor. They could crouch, they could hide, they could stealth kill, they could attack from above and stealth kill. So they were very versatile beasts, but they were only available in DLC. Now the Caragors in Shadow of War are Karagaths, basically. They have the stealth kills, they have the maneuverability, they have the hiding. So that's all there. They have different types of grogs. They have an elemental grog, a poison grog, just a regular grog. They have drakes now, so you can fly on a drake. I don't know if they're calling it a drake. I call it a drake, a dragon, whatever. You can shadow mount these things, or you can mount them straight up once you have the ability, and you can fly around the maps and actually do damage from the sky. And these things have special attacks against small people and grogs, and so everything, they put a lot into this, and I was surprised to even hear that it was coming out, one. And then two, when they announced it, they were already basically done with the game. So they announced it, and then they started doing gameplay trailers, and it just looked so crisp and clean. And they were showing off different armor sets, which just blew my mind. And there's the different factions of the orcs. They put a lot of time in the orcs themselves. There are now different factions of orcs, and each one does something different. You have the machine orcs, which they can like rebuild orcs out of metal and stuff. It gets pretty twisted. You have the warmongers, you have the cursed, there's so many different factions, and whoever you dominate and make the leader of your particular fortress that you overtake, that's how that fortress becomes. So if you take over a machine, then they'll industrialize. It's just incredible. Like, it's definitely a game to look into. I would definitely look up in YouTube. If you look up, I think it's Monolith, they'll have all the videos there. One of the things I was excited for, that they just decided to make a free DLC. One of their developers passed away due to cancer in development.
I saw this.
And they made an orc based off of him that's already part of your crew. Like, I don't think he's one you can just keep in your army. I think he just randomly shows up and saves your life occasionally. So, but originally they had tried to do something nice for the family, and it was a paid DLC. You were supposed to pay like $5, and like 3 something went to the family, while the other one went to, like, I guess Steam, because they have
that's what I saw.
Yeah,
that's what I saw.
But there were certain states that didn't have it, and then overseas, really, they couldn't, they had no idea where their money was going when they paid for the DLC, so it became an outrage. And now they've made it a free DLC and explained everything, but they left a link up. I think it's on their YouTube channel. Again, if you find Monolith and find this trailer, it has a link where you can actually donate to the family to help out if you so feel. So I thought that was pretty cool. The thing that's making everybody mad right now, which, it's the same thing that Destiny does, so I don't know why they're still complaining about it, is the loot boxes. Now, there's loot boxes that you can pay with in-game money, and then there's loot boxes that you pay with real money. And this is not a pay-to-win. Yes, But this is not a pay-to-win game. They've said everything you can find in these boxes, you can find in the game world. You will come across these eventually. But it's way later on, so you can pay for it now and get a certain build, like, a certain build in your army and everything early, or you can wait until you unlock it later. And the same thing can happen with the in-game money. If you buy a loot box from in-game money, there's a possibility that you will get, epics and rares, but I think the legendaries are only if you pay real money. My whole deal, I've always avoided loot boxes. Like, I'll get the ones that have the in-game money part to it, but if it's real money, I'll skip. I'll just earn it. It's cool. I don't care. Yeah. I'll get a legendary captain the hard way.
Sony's the worst with microtransactions, it seems like. I know they said NBA 2K18 that just came out is supposed to be the worst game out right now for microtransactions. Like,
uh-oh.
Yeah, you still there?
Oh no, we lost him.
Uh-oh.
Yep.
Am I here?
Nope, there he is.
I don't know.
Yep.
As I was saying, NBA 2K18, I think if you play the single player campaign to where you pretty much you create a basketball star and you get drafted to a team, to level your character up at all, you have to use microtransactions. Like, they force you to spend your own money to buy the BT points. And I mean, it's just, which it's also had the most returns of any 2K basketball game.
Imagine that.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
See, I'm okay with microtransactions if it's something like what Destiny does, or Overwatch. If you guys, and Tyler, I know you've played that somewhat. The loot boxes are for cosmetic effects only.
Yep.
That I am fine with that because it doesn't affect gameplay.
It's not pay to win.
Exactly. And especially in a game, what has blown my mind about microtransactions more than anything else is, and Shadow of War is a good example of this, is when you are playing a single player exclusive experience and they expect you to pay for loot boxes that essentially allow you to skip content.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what are you doing? Why would you pay more money to not experience the game that you just purchased? The whole point of the game is to progress and unlock these things as you level up and as you get more powerful. And you're just gonna skip to the end. Like, where do you think your $60 is going at that point?
Now, they're still fine-tuning it, but it wouldn't surprise me if, you go in and buy their platinum chest or whatever it's called, their mithril chest or whatever.
Yeah.
And it'd be like legendary captains all the way around, and you can just set up your first army with, excellent leaders that can't be taken out. Well, then you're overpowered for the rest of the game. Exactly. I don't mind being overpowered, but I enjoy it more when I've earned that. Like, that's why I loved about Shadow of Mordor. When you first start in Shadow of Mordor, it is a chore to take out a captain. It is a chore to get anywhere. But by the time I made it to the second map, because there's two.
Oh yeah.
By the time I made it to the second map, I was unstoppable. It didn't matter what they had and their weaknesses or I could take out a captain that had no weaknesses. Like, if they were just all strengths and they were monster slayer, they were invulnerable to ranged, invulnerable to combat, invulnerable to stealth, and heavy hitter and vault blocker, and I could still take them out. Like, there were several ways I got around it.
No, I was just saying that system. I started that game as like, okay, this is because of course I don't know if you remember the whole controversy. That game, the Shadow of Mordor, started as kind of using the assets of Assassin's Creed 2, and there's a lot of controversy
and
around
Batman.
that it was just going to be kind of a ripoff. And I started the game and was like, okay, this is okay. I'm a huge Stephen Colbert level Lord of the Rings nerd, so I was into it just for that, if nothing else. So, but I was like, this is an okay game. By the end of that game, I became one of my favorite games of all time because of the Nemesis system.
Yes.
The first time that I thought that I had killed someone, and then that guy comes back and calls me, you know, I forget what they say, but you know, he comes back and he calls me out pretty much by name. Yeah. And it's just, and I'm like, holy cow, this is, and he now has a resistance to how I killed him the first time.
Oh, and scarred.
You know, and if he kills, and a scar, and if he kills me, then he gets another bonus. He gets he gets even stronger, and so now I have incentive. He's killed me. I want to go after this guy, and I go after him again. And if he kills me again, he gets even stronger, and. And then you get to the, not, you know, spoilers for a game that's how old, but you get to the end of the game, and whoever has, you know, you've encountered the most, whoever has managed to survive,
your nemesis,
is now your nemesis, and he is now essentially the boss of the game right before the true, you know, big bad. I was just like, oh my god, like it created a feeling in a video game I have never had before in my life.
They have expanded it so much for the next one.
And exactly, and to hear that they're focusing so much on that and see expanded. I don't know if you've seen the little micro trailers. You know, they're like little, like 10, 15 second shots of like, I follow the Lightbringer because of this, or you know, I oppose him because of that. It's like he took my eye, or he showed me mercy, and all this stuff. Oh my god, like it just brought all of that back, and I cannot wait to see what they do with it.
Oh yeah, for anybody watching this, again, YouTube, Monolith, there's even some outside of Monolith, some YouTube channel owners that have put up a full trailer, and it starts with everything, and then there's a character in there I want you guys to keep an eye out for. You may have to go through a few trailers, but his name is Bruz. B-R-U-Z. He sounds like Bruce from Finding Nemo. It is hilarious. Take your time, watch that trailer. I love it. I'm going to look for that guy. Hopefully he exists in my playthrough, because I will make him a freaking war chief. The dude is awesome.
The one other thing I wanted to touch on that you mentioned was that DLC for the employee that passed away from cancer. I saw that trailer, and it really, this is kind of the flip side of this. It really disappoints me that there was such an outrage about that, because for once I agreed with paid DLC that I was like, this is really cool. They're giving this money to this family, and you know, this means something to them. It means something to the company. I thought it was a great way for them to kind of utilize something that is normally kind of looked down upon, and to hear that there was such an outrage that they had to change that. And now, as you know, people aren't going to donate, and they're not going to make nearly as much money as they would have had it been tied to DLC. It's not even going to be a noticeable fraction.
And it was $5. Like, I don't know how people are so they were so worried about where their money was going.
Yeah, I'm glad the content's still in there, but that kind of disappoints me. I thought it was a really cool idea.
A couple things I want to get into, then we're almost out of time. We've been here for a solid hour. I did play the Ghost Recon Wildlands PvP beta.
Yep.
And I wanted to touch on, I know you didn't get well, I think you played a couple matches with me.
Yes, I did.
But I probably played a little bit more extensive than you did. So it's 4v4, and it's class-based. So, you know, you have your assault, and then in your assault you have like 4 mini classes in your assault, and one might be the point man, which point man, each class has a perk. So like point man is immune to suppression fire, so somebody can't suppress you, and then but you have no drone. You know, then you have your pretty much support class and sniper and all of your support classes inside each of the main class. Really fun. I really enjoyed it. It was pretty intense. They have mini map, but you cannot see friendly fire, or you cannot see fire on the map at all. All I noticed was that if somebody fires on the opposing team, you'll have a yellow dot that will blink on the screen,
right,
just in a generalized location.
Now, can I get you to clarify something for me real quick?
Yeah.
Now, this is the one that I know, at least from the cooperative experience, it's like an open world map that you can complete missions in just an infinite amount of ways, kind of like Metal Gear Solid 5. Is that correct?
No.
Yeah. Well, no, I guess yes and no. It is a open world, but however, you can take a different approach to completing the mission. But essentially, I was pretty disappointed with the overall game because it's such a grind and it is a lot of repetition.
Now, did you guys play Metal Gear Solid 5? Do you know what I'm referring to?
Oh, yes.
Okay. It was incredible. The storyline was convoluted and a nightmare, but the gameplay was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that Wildlands was going to be the same way, so I'm disappointed to hear that it wasn't.
In a way, the approach is kind of the same. Like, you can approach stealthily, you can be loud. There are some missions that it is required that you are completely stealthy, but most of the missions you can approach it however you want. However, the end result, like, you can't decide. Like in Metal Gear, you had several different people that you could recruit that were left on the map that were like a secondary objective. Sure. You could go and do those if you wanted to or not. In this one, there's nothing like that. And even the end boss, you can't just recruit your end goal. You can't like shove them in a trunk and take them back to a base like the trailers made it out to be. If you were sent to kill him, you killed him. There was no other option.
Well, and not to derail Tyler, my question ultimately was if the multiplayer is kind of an open map like it was, like I saw in the trailers for Wildlands in the cooperative mode, or is it more like a traditional 4v4 kind of like like PvP like it would be in anything like Call of Duty or Battlefield?
I said I was disappointed just for the fact that that grind was it's a grind and you do a lot of the same things. You get to different areas, you'll have harder opponents, but it's essentially the same thing over and over. The only other thing about the beta that I thought was cool was it's kind of Gears of War's like, which means once you die, you're out till the next round. So then it comes down to you could be by yourself against 4 people, and it can get kind of intense. The other thing that I wanted to cover was I played Dead by Daylight with some buddies. It was free to play for a weekend, and I went into that thinking it was going to be terrible. Most of the reviews that I saw were terrible, but I gotta admit, playing the game was actually a lot of fun. So the objective is you have 1 killer and 4 survivors, and if you're a survivor, you play in the third person, and you have to go around and repair generators. I believe there are 4 generators you have to repair. Once you get all the generators repaired, it activates the escape hatch, and then you have to go and open the escape hatch and get out, all the while you're being stalked by a killer. If you are the killer, you're restricted to first person, and the killer has, depending on what killer you are, they have different abilities and different perks. I think there was 4 or 5 different killers. And man, it was intense. It was definitely a fun game to play with friends. I don't know if it would be that entertaining playing by yourself online with other people you didn't know, but if you have the ability to talk to your buddies and play as survivors, it was really fun.
You're still braver than me. You're still braver than me. I'll give you that. No.
This sounds like a horror version of the game. Did you ever play Evolve?
Yes, I did.
Where one side you were a giant monster that as you fed, you evolved and gained powers against 4 like soldiers.
That's pretty much exactly what it is. It's exactly that, except you're, I guess some of them are beasts like killers, but but you're on foot pretty much. And
that sounds like my jam. That sounds really cool.
It was it's on Xbox Store right now for, I believe it's $39.99. I probably won't pick it up till it comes down another $20 or so, but it was definitely a good time. I definitely enjoyed the free weekend of playing it.
I'm really thinking they're asking too much money for those types of games. They really do.
Yeah.
Well, and my thing is, back on the microtransaction subject, like if you're gonna add a lot of microtransactions, don't charge $60 for the game. Like make a game you can buy for $25 and then free. You have the microtransaction. Right, exactly. So, but because I know like Battlefield 1, we paid $60 for the game, and then to buy the season pass is another $60 on top of that.
Oh, no.
That's dumb.
So, I know Brian has his qualms about Battlefield 1 anyways, but
The premise is a good idea. I love how the game looks, and I would like how the game played if it played right. I just can't believe that even on Xbox One, we have people who can hack the system and shoot through mountains. That gets a little annoying.
Yeah. No, I was the same way about the first Battlefront as well. You know, to call back my nerd cred, I'm a huge Star Wars fan too, and made by the same company, of course. And when they started asking $50 for a season pass, that was a hard pass for me. I was out.
Yeah. I started in Battlefront 1 and 2.
Sick.
Yep.
Yes, it
Battlefront
does.
2 looks sick.
I hope they bring back what they did in the original Battlefront 2. I want us to be able to run to our ships, fly off, and do some space battles and go down to the planet like they had mentioned in the first one. In the first one, you were supposed to like break atmosphere, and there would be a ground battle below, as well as a battle up in space, and you could go back and forth. And they scrapped the whole idea, so I hope they bring it back for this one.
Me too.
Well, I think they actually incorporated a story mode because that was the major complaint with the first one, was that there was no campaign.
Well, to be fair, the original ones really didn't have a campaign either.
No,
it was
not
just
really.
conquest.
And Aaron and I spent many hours playing the old ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Love the old ones.
Especially era mode.
Yeah, man. Great. Well, boys, we are about out of time. We've been on here for over an hour now, and but Aaron, appreciate you joining us today, buddy.
Yeah, no problem. It was fun.
Brian, anything else you want to cover real quick, wrap up before we call it?
Well, I'm just going to give our locations. We did have a change on Twitter, so I want to make sure I get that out there for everybody. So you can find us, of course, on Facebook at TBBSEPC. You can find us here at YouTube, TB Talks, BS Walks. You can find us here on SoundCloud at TBBSE, and on Twitter, our new handle is at TB Talks, BS Walks, courtesy of Matt Yockey. Thank you for fixing that for us.
Yeah, instead of a TB _ hashtag.
Yeah. Doing a whole password right there. Jeez, just a couple numbers and lowercase letters, and we'd have been set.
Right.
And you can email me at funkyfreshrhymes@gmail.com, and no, that is not a lie.
That is a legit email address.
Thank you.
No, thanks for having me today, guys. It was fun.
Yeah,
buddy. We'll see you guys. We'll see you guys later.
Yep.